let's go ahead and get into the second segment. But before I do, I'd like to acknowledge Manzano in the chat saying, "Do you think Penn State fans are being emotional after this loss? Calling for James Franklin to be fired, even though his track record against top 25 and Big Ten games is bad." And obviously there's going to be a lot of fans that are emotional. Then there's and when you are emotional, you immediately look for somebody to blame, especially when you win in a game like this. And calling for James Franklin to be fired, I genuinely don't think it was his fault that Penn State ended up losing this game. Their players just did not perform in when they needed to perform. And I understand that he doesn't have a good track record against those top teams. But again, I feel like this is more of like, a scapegoat thing. But maybe Penn State decides to fire him at the end of the day. But this was a player collapse more so than it was a coaching collapse. It's not like Penn State was up by a lot when they exited and went into the first half. The game was very close, and it was really just down to which team can make the big plays at the right moment. And Penn State's cornerbacks falling and slipping, that was very, very unlucky for them. And, excuse me, the interception at the end of the game from their quarterback was also a really big mistake. And if you're going to blame anyone, you should probably blame the quarterback or the wide receivers. The wide receivers didn't do a single thing throughout the entirety of this game. And it's really difficult to win like that when your wide receivers are essentially a non-factor. Now, he most likely was outcoached, at least on the defensive side of the ball, because, the defense was able to read those receivers and limit them to absolutely zero receptions. But again, not entirely sure. And he says, he responded, "I disagree with you just a little bit. Explain his horrible clock management with waiting to waste his time out until there was 30 seconds left in the game against Notre Dame." Obviously, I can't really explain that. I can't explain that. I don't know exactly what goes on through his head when he's doing that. But I will say that maybe he had a little bit of hope that his defense would hold out. Again, it's a mental error, and that sort of stuff happens. But the game, in my opinion, at least for me, I knew that the game was going to be over right when Notre Dame ended up getting the ball, because they had some really solid field position from where they got the ball. And it wasn't like they had to travel down the entire length of the field to go ahead and score a game-winning field goal at the end of the day. They already had great field position. They lost that game once the quarterback threw an interception and gave up the ball. They had a chance and they blew it. I think it's just that simple. But going back into the segment that I wanted to get into, we're going to talk about each and every playoff team's weakness that they have going into the wild card and going into their respective playoff games. So for the first team, we're going to talk about the Denver Broncos, and I think the biggest problem for them is their lack of a run game. Now, their quarterback, Bo Nix, has been phenomenal, but while they are very great in the air, they aren't really all that good on the ground. They're like in the middle of the pack and like the middle of the rest of the league at 112 yards per game on the ground. And Denver's carries, however, they're ranked outside of the top 20. Denver's leading rusher, Javonte Williams, he only averaged 3.7 yards per carry, and that's not really good. You sort of need a solid run game, because teams already know that you're going to be passing, and they're going to come up with schemes to sort of limit your passing. If you don't have a solid run game to rely on, then it's going to be very difficult to win in these football games. And they don't have enough, I don't think they have the firepower to be able to match up against teams like the Bills or the Ravens if they end up making it far enough to go up against those teams. But that's one issue that they have going into this game. Another team that has a jarring issue, at least in my opinion, The Green Bay Packers, actually, we're going over all these teams, but the Green Bay Packers, they have an inconsistent passing game. I joked about this, and the media has joked about this as well, that Jordan Love is a Toyotathon merchant. For some reason, every single time that Toyotathon has started, Jordan Love just balls out of his mind. And then once it ends, or before it even starts, he plays very, very questionably and is just seems to be rather mediocre in this season. Now, they've won 11 games in a very, very difficult conference, and however, the Packers, they ended up losing twice to the Vikings and the Detroit Lions, and they also fell to the Eagles early in week 1. Now, the Packers, they can't really get over the hump against conferences. It might be their passing game. Like, I think that's sort of the big reason why they can't really get over the hump in their conference, because Jordan Love has been rather inconsistent. Meanwhile, Sam Darnold and Jared Goff tends to be very consistent in their passing game, and that's sort of a really big difference between those three teams. And Jordan Love is ranked 16th amongst the quarterbacks in passing yards per game. He's 4 years into the NFL, and he's already hit 200 passing yards and 2 touchdowns just once in the past month. Like, that is not a very good recipe for success if you are the Green Bay Packers. And not only that, Christian Watson is also done for the year with a torn ACL, which is it's not an ideal situation to go into a playoff game without one of your best receivers at the helm. It's not a really good recipe for success there. Now, the next team that we're going to talk about is the Steelers, and a big problem that I feel like they have is their entire offense. Before I continue, though, Manzano wants to ask the question, did you agree with the pass interference call that went in favor of Tyler Warren on the defensive back for Notre Dame, where the guy barely touched them? Yeah, I don't agree with that call whatsoever. But obviously, these refs, they mess up from time to time. And either way, at the end of the day, it worked out. At the end, it worked out. But again, I don't agree. I don't necessarily agree with that call. But back on the Steelers and their issues, their entire offense is stinky, and this has been a trend that goes on for the Steelers every single time. Every single year that the Steelers have had a positive record, they always have a lackluster offense, but they somehow have a positive record because their defense is able to keep them in games. They play some of the ugliest football in the modern NFL right now, and they still are able to win games, and they still are able to have some sort of success in the regular season at least. And I think their entire offense is going to hold them back tremendously in the postseason. It usually always does. So the next team that we are going to talk about is the Dallas Cowboys, and their biggest issue is that they're not in the playoffs, and they have Dak Prescott at quarterback. You know very well that I'm going to take a shot at Dallas whenever I can. So, ha! But aside from that, we're going to talk about the other NFC rival that I just do not like, but I do like their quarterback, however. The Washington Commanders. Now, the Commanders, they've been fantastic on offense, both in the air and on the ground. Hold on just one second. Anthony Manzano says Carson Beck, the quarterback for Georgia. Wait, what? He transferred to Miami? Wait a minute. Hold on. I need to figure that out because I did not see that coming. I knew he was going to try and transfer, but I didn't think he was going to go to Miami. Hold on just 1 second. I want to see how that goes. Let me see. Hold on. I did not, I don't see any sort of confirmation on that, so I'm going to have to get back to you on that. But that was Jesus, don't scare me like that. Like, why would you do that? Again, no confirmation on that. Maybe you're right. Maybe you already have, I don't know, maybe you're some sort of insider. I don't know what you are, but I have not seen any sort of confirmation on that from any of the major news sites. So I'm just going to hold off on that and continue going into the going into this list of the issues for each and every playoff team. But again, the biggest issue for Washington, in my opinion, is their run defense. Now, let me just try and put up some stats. Let me see real quick. I'm trying to find the stats, but there was also a quote that Scott Smith wrote from the Bucks and their website. Irving's instinctive moves make him a pain to bring down despite his size, as he forced a missed tackle on 35% of his runs, the highest mark for any player with at least 150 carries this season. Just 2 weeks ago, during a 190-yard performance in a win over Carolina, Irving gained 111 yards after contact. He is also a natural pass catcher and a weapon to go the distance on outlet and swing passes. Now, the Commanders against the run, they have been allowing 137 yards per game. No team in the postseason has given up more than that. And Manzano says, I'm a Hurricanes fan and I follow 24/7 in ESPN, and a lot of college football reporters are reporting this. Again, I haven't gotten that report yet, so I have no idea how accurate that is. So I can't really talk about that yet until I actually get a notification. So again, you might be right, and I might just be completely wrong for saying that for not talking about it, but again, not entirely sure about that, so I can't really talk about that in confidence, so I apologize for that. But next team that we're going to talk about is the Chargers, and the biggest problem with the Chargers, at least in my opinion, is their run game. Now, Dobbins has set a career high in rushing yards this season with 905 and averaged 4.6 yards per carry. But for the season, the Chargers have averaged only 110 yards per game and ranked in the bottom half of the league. So they're almost entirely reliant on Justin Herbert's right arm, which is something that's been, a little bit of a trend in the Chargers' history when they do have Justin Herbert. And, excuse me. But the reality of this, Dobbins was impressive after contact and fifth in the league with 24 broken tackles, but he had to work for absolutely every single yard. And again, like I said before, not having a competent enough run game is going to be very difficult for teams to sort of win with that, because if the other team knows that you're going to be heavily reliant on the pass, then teams are going to find a way to defend it. And Anthony Manzano says his biggest worry about the Chargers going into the playoffs is their inconsistent and lack of faith in the run game. Well, you can't really have that much faith with the numbers that I just gave. Now, going into the next team, which is... Oh, wait, no, this is not the next team. Hold on just 1 second. I'm trying to find the next team real quick. Hold on. Okay, so for some reason, when I pulled up the Vikings, a picture of the Vikings was not showing, which was very, very weird. But regardless, the Vikings are going to be the next team. And Minnesota has... their problem is Sam Darnold. And I'm not that keen on Sam Darnold being the starting quarterback of a playoff team. He's been a little bit inconsistent. Again, this team is just so good offensively that it really hasn't mattered all that much. But I'm scared that Sam Darnold is going to mess up eventually, because he's Sam Darnold and that's what he does. Eventually, his mess up is going to come. So that's my thought process on that. Again, I could just be completely wrong, but I genuinely don't think I am, because he's Sam Darnold. What more needs to be said about Sam Darnold other than the fact that he's Sam Darnold? I don't care that he had a very impressive year. The playoffs are a completely different environment, especially now, because it should be noted that the Vikings game against the Rams has been changed and has been moved to play over in Atlanta because of all the fires that have been going on in Los Angeles. So just for player safety, the game has been moved over to Atlanta. The next team is the Houston Texans. Their biggest problem, aside from C.J. Stroud, is the lack of an offensive line. Now, the offensive line has had several injuries. Now, this team has also had several injuries at wide receiver, and I feel like the offensive line according to Ben Rolfe, CJ Stroud's propensity to hold the ball for a long time hasn't really helped the Texans and this number. But 11.3% of sack rate in a face of a blitz. That's 28th, and it's not really down to CJ Stroud being unable to get rid of the ball quick. But Houston has also allowed 35.6%. Excuse me. They have a 35. Jesus. They have a 35.6% pressure rate, which is 28th against 4 or fewer pass rushers. They rank 31st in RBYBC/rush and 30th in run block win rate. So, again, not a very ideal situation to go into in this game. Now, the next team that we are going to talk about, and we're going to have to go through this a little bit quickly, is the Rams, and they have a very inconsistent defense. The Rams won the NFC West this year, but Sean McVay has told reporters that the likes of edge rushers Jared Verse and safety Cameron Kinchins haven't played like this was their first season in the pros, and they are the embodiment of this team. So that's a pretty good sign, yes. But as a whole, Los Angeles is 26th in yards allowed and a middling 17th in scoring defense. And again, defense is something that you really need in these postseasons. Now, the next team that we're going to talk about is the Baltimore Ravens. And the biggest problem for the Ravens is a really bad secondary, in my opinion. And while Lamar Jackson is fantastic and Derrick Henry has been fantastic, the Ravens are 31st in the league against the pass. This is the worst ranking in any team in the postseason. And going up against a solid team that could actually score the football a lot, like Josh Allen or maybe even Patrick Mahomes in the playoffs, that's going to be a very difficult task for this Ravens team. Now, the next team on this list is going to be the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And their biggest problem is also a bad passing defense. Now, the Bucs were 29th in the NFL against the pass this year, allowing 243 yards per game. And Tampa's 96.6 passer rating against is the highest of any team in the postseason. Now, obviously, this is not ideal, especially when you're going up against a quarterback like Jaden Daniels, who is really, really good at throwing the ball. Now, the next team on this list is going to be, if I can actually click on them properly. No, I cannot. There we go. The Bills. Now, you guys can't really see my screen, but it's like the screens for the presentation, they're blank on my screen, so I can't really see anything for some reason. But the biggest problem for the Bills is the lack of star wide receivers. Obviously, that wasn't a problem when they had Stephon Diggs, but now that they don't really have him, while it hasn't affected Josh Allen that much, the lack of star wide receivers with the consistent ability to get open is not ideal going into this game. The Bills rank 4th in net pass yards per attempt, yet they are a bottom 10 offense in average separation score, according to Fantasy Points. Matt Collins has a wide receiver room's highest open score at 63, which is 32nd, while each of some of the other analysts have them at either 72nd. Like Kyle Shakir is 51, 72nd, Keon Coleman 46, 83rd, and Amari Cooper 43, 88th. This is like overall Buffalo has the sixth worst average open score among all qualified wide receivers and tight ends. So they seem to have an inability or a difficulty trying to get open. Now, the next team is going to be the Philadelphia Eagles, and their biggest problem is Jalen Hurts, who I think has been rather inconsistent throughout a majority of the year. And I'm not really going to say much just because we are running really low on time. But again, Jalen Hurts, he started as a turnover machine, and then all of a sudden he started playing really good football. So it's like, what kind of Jalen Hurts are you going to get in this playoff matchup? And then the Chiefs, their biggest issue, at least for the regular season, has been their dink and dunk offense. They've been throwing a lot of checkdowns, way more than usual, and Patrick Mahomes has also thrown a couple interceptions this year. And dinking and dunking, while it's worked for players like Tom Brady for 20 plus years, I'm not sure if it's going to work against the Chiefs. Now, or I'm not sure it's going to work in favor of the Chiefs, excuse me. And then finally, the Detroit Lions. And again, their big problem is having a poor pass defense. And they have a season-high 75.6% pass defense success rate, which is a remarkable feat given that the Lions' health and quality of their opponent. This unit is still a concern with all of the injuries that they have. So Terrion Arnold is going to be out. Linebacker Alex Anzalone, excuse me if I messed up that last name, he's also going to be out in this game. And he was a difference maker in his return to the lineup, and it's still possible for the likes of like Carlton Davis and Aiden Hutchinson to return with a deep playoff run. But again, it's the fact that these guys are injured. And also, the Lions have been really good against the run all season, 5th in the league at just 98.4 yards per game. So it's really just the passing that's been a little bit of a problem for this team. So that's all that I have in this second segment, a much longer segment than the rest of the other ones. So we're going to go ahead and go into the short break and then talk about the all-pro teams that have been announced in the NFL. It's going to be a quicker segment than usual because I spent a lot of time on this. So I'll be right back after this short break. Be sure to stay tuned.
Looking for your daily fix of sports talk without having to pay for it? GSMC Sports Network is available on YouTube. Just search GSMC Sports Network. Get your fix of daily sports talk shows on YouTube, absolutely free. NFL, college football, NBA, MLB, MMA, UFC, fantasy football, and so much more. GSMC Sports Network has shows running all day long, with new sports shows starting every 2 hours. Just like on your favorite cable sports channel, except GSMC Sports Network is absolutely free. Just search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube to catch one of your new favorite shows, like the GSMC College Football Podcast, Chip Shot Football Podcast, Hoops and Heels Women's Sports Podcast, GSMC Basketball Podcast, and so many more. Check it out for yourself. GSMC Sports Network, now available on YouTube absolutely free. Search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube right now.